Oy vey. I don't even think I'm even. This tripod is gonna be the death of me. If I kill myself, blame the goddamn tripod. Anyways, hi, my name is Unpopular Witchcraft. Welcome back to my channel. And today I am doing a video that Hearth Witch did first. I don't know if they watch my channel. I don't know if they even know I exist, but I do love them very dearly and they did this first. So this is your guys' unpopular witchcraft opinions. Whoa, this is gonna be interesting. I have to actually find the screenshots I took first because they're in here somewhere. But I did this question and answer thing on my Instagram a while ago. Here we go. I did 2 questions. Holy shnikes. There's a lot in here. So we're gonna start off with, these are completely anonymous. Even if I disagree or agree, I will say why. They are unpopular witchcraft opinions and that is valid. I believe spirits are all-knowing and so there are no trickster deities. Go you. I don't know if I believe in like imposter deities. I know I was big on the wave of like checking deities for imposters, but since I've kind of grown and my opinions changed a little bit, I don't know if I completely fall into like, I don't believe spirits are all-knowing. Some spirits are, but not all spirits. But overall, very valid opinion, UPG, etc. 1, the only 2 you need is yourself. I agree with that. 2, not everything happens for a reason. Also, I agree with that because I think that when we say everything happens for a reason, oftentimes it's used to say that really, really terrible things happen for a reason when sometimes really, really terrible things just happen. And I have, even though personally, sometimes I think everything happens for a reason and that lesson can lead to a greater lesson, I don't always think that it's used in the best context, which is why I tend not to use it. Cultural and historical research for context is 100% absolutely necessary for deity work. I agree with that. Witchy creators don't owe anyone shit, especially not information. I agree with that, and I'll explain why. I understand that I am an educator, I am a content creator, and a lot of people come to me for education, but there is some information that I am not going to give you because the question you asked me, if you typed it into Google, you would have gotten an answer immediately. I try to be as open as I can about things that I'm really interested in, but a lot of times, you know, there are a lot of content creators who just make content for entertainment and not necessarily to give out information or educate. Most witches share too much of their personalized craft on TikTok. I agree with this a little bit, but also disagree. I agree a little bit because I do think that there's a power to keeping certain things secret, and that's just from my particular practice. A lot of things are kept in the dark because that's what my ancestors did. But I also think that depending on the person and their craft, they may not put that same emphasis on secret is good and may want to be open and share their personalized craft. I do, however, have a problem with when people share unverified personal gnosis or their opinions or their personal beliefs as facts. I hate the term baby witch. I've seen people using it to avoid responsibility for shitty actions. I also hate the term baby witch, which is why I typically use witchling or beginner witch or novice witch. I think it's infantilizing people who are often straight up like adults. If people want to use that term, that's fine. I just hope that, like this person said, that they're not using it to avoid responsibility. Because even if you're a quote-unquote baby witch, if you're 30 years old, you're still a full adult and should understand that actions have consequences and you need to take responsibility for those actions. People need to stop relying on others to tell if something was or wasn't a sign. It's for you to figure out. I agree with this so hard. Oh my God, okay. I love this one because it's true. And I've talked about this a little bit in our podcast, Books and Broomsticks, which you can follow and listen to, with my co-host Matt Hatter Plays. But 100% there are some times when like signs happen and they're personal to that individual. I have very personal signs that mean something to me, and a lot of people want to generalize and say, okay, if I have the same sign happen, it's exactly the same meaning as Frankie. No, because a lot of times my signs are very personal, and while there are historical symbolism and complex ideas around like the sighting of different animals, etc., and we can see those historically as signs, there's a chance that if you're not finding it like historically in the symbolism, it's you, and it's for you to figure out. You need to charge your crystals with intention in order to work. I disagree with that, but that's okay. Actually, I don't know if I agree or disagree with that. I kind of just don't work with crystals a lot. Not everyone can do a ritual every day, and that's completely okay and valid. Yeah. It hit me in a realization the other day when I had a random flare-up out of nowhere, and I was like, I don't know how to do my daily practice today. I don't even have, like, my daily practice is like, I just had no energy and I wanted to lay down and sleep. And there's a lot of realisticness of like working a lot, not having a lot of energy, chronic illness, disability, that makes it so you can't practice every day. I always encourage people to like, if there's, and with my mentorship, if there's something that I feel like will be beneficial for the mentee to do frequently, I say every other day or once a week. I try not to impose do it every day, because not everyone can do that. These are fun. Some TikTok witches focus too much on spell jars. Like, there are other things you can do, you know? I agree with that. I think exploring other mediums of spell work is really interesting and fun and can help you personalize your practice more. It's very rude to ask a random online witch a bunch of questions instead of Google. I don't know if it's rude. Depends on the questions and when they're being presented. I've had people ask me questions on videos that have nothing to do with what they're asking me, and they're just asking me to get my opinion. And I've also had people ask me questions at really inappropriate times. Like, I will be talking very openly and vulnerably about something, and someone will be in the comments asking me what an angel number means. It's about reading the room, which is difficult, and I understand that 100%. I am shit at reading the room. But if everyone else isn't, you know, asking those questions, or I'm not kind of talking very openly about angel numbers, which I don't mention angel numbers a lot because I don't go by them. I do have a shirt with it on it though. But it is kind of sometimes awkward because it's like a very vulnerable post, a very open post, something very emotional, and someone will be asking me a really random question. And it feels a little rude when it's done like that. Some people like the aesthetic more than actually practicing. Post and boast. I find this take interesting because posting and boasting about it, I feel like, this is gonna be difficult. I don't think there's anything wrong with liking the aesthetic of witchcraft if you also are approaching it in a respectful way. I think that it's wrong when you're only liking it for the aesthetic and lying about why you're in witchcraft, or presenting your information and stuff in a way that shows that you're really experienced or advanced when maybe you're not. That is my problem. If you're in it for the aesthetic, you're in it because you like the witchcraft aesthetic, you like the dark, moody stuff, and that gets you into it, okay, you can kind of go down the line and you'll either fall out of it because you aren't really interested and you are only interested for the aesthetic, or you will get more into it and become a practitioner. I think that it's very difficult to judge someone's practice based off of what they post online. So even if it looks like they're just into it for the aesthetic, it is very difficult to pin them as someone who's only in it for the aesthetic based off their Instagram posts. Deities are nothing more than archetypes we personified and now revere. I love this kind of UPG and train of thought. I don't follow that same kind of gnosis, but that's okay because I think that when we think about things in this way, it's really fucking interesting. And this is a 100% valid belief set to have. I don't think it's unpopular. I think a lot of people hold it, and I think it's really interesting to explore and think about. Ancestor work is important, especially if your ancestors were racist/colonizers. I agree with that one. And the reason I agree with it is because if you're not looking at those cycles that your ancestors who are racist and colonizers are upholding, the trauma that was done to people of color, the way that you yourself are upholding white supremacy, colonizer rhetoric, racism, how are we gonna change and do better for our next generations? Because part of my ancestor work is being an anti-racist and doing my best to be an ally to communities that need it. I think that what happens is, and this is my opinion based off of conversations I've had, is that when we see that a lot of people don't want to do that work and a lot of people don't want to deal with those racist and colonizer ancestors, which I do get that. And it's different if you have like, they were just pieces of shit and you didn't get along with them and you don't want to, they're just like abusive. That's different. But I think that it is our problem as white people to undo that generational trauma that has been inflicted on people of color that our ancestors did. Because yeah, I understand not wanting to deal with racist ancestors. I don't deal with my racist ancestors. The way I deal with them is by doing anti-racist work and dealing with that generational trauma that was inflicted on people of color. I've never spoken to them, but I do that work because I know that my ancestors contributed to it. And facing that is important. Because in facing that, you face the ways that you uphold white supremacy, your internalized racist biases, everything. That is important, and I agree with that. Beep, beep, beep. You can pick and choose what to follow, except closed practices, they stay closed. I agree with that to an extent. I think if you pick and choose what to follow to the extent that you are ignoring cultural context or taking things out of cultural context, that is overall harmful. But otherwise, I do agree. I mean, my practice is primarily Italian American folk magic, but I also have a little bit of chaos magic sprinkled in there. And I also do technomancy. And I also look at ancient Roman religion. So I'm all over the place. Ooh. It's better to have a deep connection with a handful of plants than shallow connections with a ton. I agree with that, because shallow connection with any spirits, when we're talking in terms of animism and connecting with plant spirits, shallow connections with any spirit usually ends up blowing up in your face because you start a connection and then you don't give it enough attention. I have enough trouble with the small handful of plants and making sure they're all happy, and all my herbal allies. Same with the animal spirits. I agree with that, and that's just, personal gnosis opinions. It's okay to blow out your candles. Yes, I agree with that. I'm actually not quite sure where the idea of blowing out candles is disrespectful came from. If someone knows where it's from, please let me know in the comments. But also, if it came from a very specific culture, tradition, or place, a lot of people wouldn't be aware of it or even follow it. You don't need to honor or worship deities within your craft. Yes! Yes, but deity work is a choice. You don't need to worship or honor deities to be a witch. You don't. We can do many spells without candles, but people still think we need them every time. I think candle spells and jar spells are the most popular spells on the internet, and there are lots of other methods. I do candle spells a lot because I love them, but you can 100% do spell work without candles, and you don't need to do it every time. Personally, I've made a lot of bag spells or satchel spells. I've done a lot of spells where I just burned a piece of paper and gave it, no candle involved, herbal mixtures, fumigations, etc. UPG should be shared to see where the similarities are. Should not be shared as a complete fact. Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of my pet peeves, is when people share their personal gnosis or personal opinions as fact. I think that sharing UPGs and personal gnosises, when it's clear that this is your opinion, this is the personal gnosis that I have, as to share and connect with others and compare is amazing. But when people state it as if it's 100% a fact, why? I don't know if this is unpopular, but I hate that people infantilize deities. Drives me crazy when I see it. So here's the thing. I don't know if I've seen a lot of infantilization of deities. I'm trying to think about like examples. I don't necessarily love the infantilization of anything because, especially when they're deities, I'm assuming people referring to like small uwu god, like that's my small uwu god, or kind of bringing deities down to cuteness. So here's my opinion. I don't like it, but I understand why it exists. We as humans tend to put our experiences and humanize and anthropomorphize deities, and some people's form of anthropomorphization may be that infantilization. This person is a Mexican witch. The way some European practitioners criticize our syncretism cultures, that's all I got. I don't like the way that European practitioners criticize the syncretism in a lot present in a lot of cultures, especially like Mexican witchcraft, indigenous witchcraft, even folk witchcraft. I agree that it's problematic, and there is this idea that like Christianity and witchcraft have never mixed, when syncretization between folk practices and Christianity is very big. Like, and I made a whole video on this, and there's still people commenting, even though I gave historical references for things that we ID as witchcraft nowadays wouldn't be called witchcraft and would be syncretized with Catholicism and folk Catholicism. And yeah, UPG is so important. Not sure if that's unpopular. I'm barely in the witchcraft sphere. That's okay. I agree with UPG being important. UPG is what dominates our practice. It's how we decide to do things. It's how we move through our lives, is with our unverified personal gnosis, our experiences, our opinions. They're what make us us. It is important. You don't need any tools to be a witch. I agree with this. I think that a lot of people say that you need a lot of tools, etc. But I mean, like, I think way down the line tools are helpful, but do I think that you can 100% be a witch without it? Yeah. Many witches won't correct others to prevent misinformation. They do it to make themselves look better. I think I agree with this. And I agree with this primarily because of the internet, and I see this happen a lot. But yeah, people base stuff off other creators in witchcraft when it should be about what you want. Yes. Oh, yes. Fuck yes. Witchcraft is about what you want. You don't have to base it off other creators and their experiences in witchcraft. Intention means a lot, but isn't everything. I agree with that. And I think some people may say me saying you don't need tools means me like intention is everything, but I think that there's possibilities to do things not just with intention, but without like tools as a witch. Not just sending your intention out into the universe, but without tools, you can still go out into nature and like connect with it and connect with spirits, etc. And that is witchcraft, and there's a form of witchcraft, like hedge witchery, garden witchery. Technically those aren't tools. You're connecting with the garden, you're connecting with all these things. Is hedge witchery the right term for it? I do not know. I think when we say intention means everything, I see a lot of people taking something like an herb and ascribing a new intention to it. Like rosemary as a baneful herb, when historically that's not an association. And while that can be your UPG and your personal association with rosemary as a baneful herb, if rosemary historically has been used for protective properties and not for baneful workings, how well is it going to work in a baneful spell? Not saying that you can't do it or you're a bad witch or anything like that if you do it. I'm just curious because I've never done it. And how does that work? Like, if something historically is protective and has protecting associations, how does it work when it's ascribed a new meaning by someone? This is more of a discussion for the comments, because I'm sitting here like, I don't have an answer. I don't fucking know. Deities and angels are not a necessary part of practice. Yeah, I agree with that. You do not need to do deity work or anything. I don't think that taking pharmaceutical medications dulls your natural magic at all, ever. I agree with that. hardcore. I think it's 100% possible to still get in touch with your natural magic when you're on pharmaceutical drugs, whether that's birth control, medication, etc. I 100% agree. You don't have to keep a book of shadows. I love this. I love this because I agree. I know many witches who do not keep a book of shadows, but just write down their experiences with the spells they do. Book of shadows are great, and journaling is great for keeping track of your witchcraft, but it doesn't have to be a book of shadows. You could literally like write down your experience with a spell you did and the results, and that counts. I like tracking stuff, but not everyone's gonna want a book of shadows, and that's fine. Okay, TikTok severely damaged how witchcraft actually is. I agree with that to an extent, but I agree with it because I think it's not just TikTok. I think that a lot has happened that damages how witchcraft actually is. Major media, popular media, movies, shows, etc., those all 100% contributed to people's perceptions of witchcraft and what it actually is. Even the popularization of Wicca contributed to what witchcraft actually is. I think if we're going to look at TikTok as a platform and how it presents witchcraft and how it changes the perception of what witchcraft is, we also need to look at every other social media platform. And a lot of times, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, the things that get a lot of attention are the more controversial or like crazy witchcraft stuff, not necessarily the like educational, informational things that you would see and be like, this is very much witchcraft. I don't think it's just TikTok. I think that so many things have damaged the perception of witchcraft, and showing realistically what witchcraft is like is really important to take away those perceptions. But I think that TikTok is part of a greater whole. That all started with like Hocus Pocus Halloween Town, and I think we can go even further. Witchcraft was damaged in like what it looks like by anti-witch laws, by anti-Semitic depictions of witches. We're not the only ones who have been hurt by the stereotypes of witchcraft. It's also targeted Indigenous people, Judaism, people of color, and their practices. Think of terms white magic, black magic. When I say black magic, what do you think of? Do you think of like hoodoo voodoo? Because that's a negative demonization of those practices. You can also think of it in terms of like demons and stuff, but even then, you know, I personally don't use white magic, black magic, because I do think that it's a term that kind of racialized our ideas of what good magic and bad magic is, especially contributing to, like, think of AHS Coven. Like, I do think that I loved that show, but there was a lot of like a little bit of demonization in there, as well as a lot of other medias that demonized hoodoo and voodoo, primarily, you know, people of color dominated practices, and said they were black magic. Why is black bad? Why do we say black is bad? And I think a lot of people still ascribe black magic as a bad thing, and that's a problem. Anyways, moving on. We really shouldn't tell new witches to not buy a bunch of stuff. Some learn better if they have the tools. I agree and disagree. I think that when you are beginning as a witch, you can buy tools if you want, but personally, I would have loved if I didn't have the pressure that I found in a lot of books and a lot of social media that I needed it. And I'm not necessarily saying with my, you know, talking about budget witchcraft that you can't buy tools, just that you don't need them, because there's so many sources that are like, you need this, this, and this. No, you don't. Go to the spice cabinet in your kitchen. There's something there for you. You don't need to buy anything. Also, a lot of people may not have the money to buy tools, but that doesn't mean you can't, and tools can help people. But I feel like the experiences of, you know, saying, I've seen more people saying you need A, B, and C to be a witch and start witchcraft, or you need A, B, and C, go buy it, than I've seen maybe hold on, you can get your tools from these other places and that will also work. Being a witch is a political statement. I agree. I agree. Casting a circle is a waste of time. That's definitely an unverified personal gnosis, and you are so entitled to that opinion. I personally don't cast a circle, but I know casting a circle is present in a lot of traditions and is helpful to a lot of witches. It looks like that was all. Oh, here we go. I quit witchcraft because of the watering down of cultures. Firstly, I am sorry that you quit. I mean, that is really frustrating, and I definitely understand that frustration. The watering down of cultures within witchcraft is a huge problem. I think that a lot of cultural context gets erased, and I think it's something we need to talk about and something we need to be more mindful of as a community. My camera stopped. We had two different opinions. We had one that says you shouldn't be a tarot reader if you still have to look up the meanings of the cards, and we also had someone say that you don't have to memorize all meanings of the tarot cards in order to be a good reader. That is fully opinion. I said in the middle. I think that if you're just learning tarot, maybe don't start charging readings for it, but it's okay to have to stop and look up a meaning. I think that sometimes my memory is shoddy. Sometimes I have to stop a reading and say, I kind of just blanked on this meaning. Let me go look it up and make sure I get this to you correctly. And I've been doing this a long time. Traditional / folk witchcraft has a devil. As the witch father, he's a part of folk magic. So I believe that traditional witchcraft, yes. Folk magic, historically speaking, I'm not talking about Reconstructionists and newer folk practitioners, but folk magic historically has no presence of a witch father or the devil. I mean, and that's based off of my particular research with folk magic. I think traditional witchcraft 100% has the witch father and the devil in it. I do think a lot of folk magic, in terms of newer folk magic, do opt for working with the devil as like a construct of the witch father. We think of like Lucifer, Diana, and the Adadia, but Adadia is a newer book. Historically speaking, when we look at anthropology texts, there isn't necessarily that presence, because specifically in Italy, and I can't speak for other practices, but in a lot of folk practices, when it's syncretized with Catholicism or Christianity, working with the devil is like, that'll get you pinned as a witch and persecuted against and ostracized. So even if they did it in like quiet, like comfort, it was still ascribed as like not the witch father, etc. So I'm speaking from a historical perspective and an Italian folk magic perspective. I cannot speak for other folk magics as in-depthly, but historically speaking, in the anthropology texts I've read, the presence of a goddess or a witch mother is more there than a witch father. And we can see that in like goddesses that were present before Christianity and the syncretization, muddling down into Saint Anne and Mother Mary, Queen of Heaven, Star of the Sea, language that was used for a lot of goddesses pre-Christianity. And then we water it down and we get here and we have Mary, Saint Mary, who's so important, Saint Anne, who's so important, Diana, Hecate, all of these goddesses that are associated with folk practices and witchcraft historically through the watering down. But I haven't found anything of a witch father, which that's okay. This is your opinion and you are entitled to your opinion. Just because I disagree with you doesn't mean your opinion's invalid. Left hand practice is not bad or evil. I agree with that. I think that ascribing bad or evil to it is black and white thinking. It's slightly rude to an animal to take its bone. You must give it an offering to do so. I agree with this. Whenever I take anything from the land, I give an offering to the land, if not the animal itself. Those offerings differ and are different, but I usually don't take without giving something in return. That's just basic reciprocity. If you're interested in that kind of reciprocity, I recommend Plant Witchery and Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kammerer. They talk a lot about it. You don't need to buy anything, and the rocks outside are better than fancy crystals. I agree with that. I love my rocks. Your deity is not your parent and responds for every little thing. I agree with that based off of my experiences with Diana. I know deity work is different for everyone. Perception of deities is different for everyone. Beauty and aesthetics are not hollow energetically. Visuals really add to a practice. I agree with this. And I agree, because like even when we look at glamour magic, that magic is there because pretty shit. And that's why I'm okay with witches starting witchcraft because of the aesthetic, because those visuals and that pretty aesthetic is still valuable. It's still eye-catching. There's still power there. Imagination is the best starting point for developing your psychic abilities. I agree with that. As a child, my imagination, crazy. Psychic abilities now, 10 out of 10. There are repeatable internet sources for people who can't afford books. I agree with that. There are so many, and a lot of like academic articles, if you look in the right places, you can get them for free. It's your practice. You should do whatever feels right, not just do whatever you see on the internet. I big agree with that. There is no universal substitute for any material, can vary for anyone. I agree, because substitutions are very big on like in personal gnosis. Like your personal practice, like your substitutions are going to be different than others, and while you can learn from others' personal gnosis, for substitutions, it's not going to be the same for everyone. You don't have to follow rules for spells. You can create your own with the right intentions. So I agree with that, but it depends on what we are talking about as rules. I think there are a few things that when we do spell work are going to happen no matter what. There's a price for the spell, whether it's your energy, your time, obstacle, etc. But I do think that following your intention with spells is the right way to go. I'm checking to see if there's anything else. I think that's all of your guys' unpopular witchcraft opinions. 10 out of 10. Very much enjoyed this. This is a long video. Sally's gonna cut it down as much as she can. Thanks, Sally. Everyone say hi. Sally's my editor. We love her. Thank you so much for watching through this whole video. If you stayed, yeah, feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment discussing some of the opinions. Remember, these are people's opinions. Just because you disagree doesn't mean their opinion is wrong or invalid. None of the ones that I read, in my opinion, actively harm anything. If you disagree with that, we can also talk about it, but my opinion is, like, if someone's opinion is actively harming, that's a different thing than someone just having a different opinion than you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Please remember to drink water. And yeah, Sabanadika.